All right, so we're here with Enion Pelta. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located? I'm in Colorado. You're in Colorado. We're both in Colorado. It's great, but what city are you in Colorado? I forgot.
I'm currently in Denver, although I spent many years up in Lyons.
Okay, Lines. Yeah.
Head back up there once our son graduates from Denver School of the Arts.
Oh, okay. So, okay, Denver School of Arts, right. And Lyons is north of Boulder. That's right. Is that right?
Northwest of Boulder, about
Yeah.
15 miles.
Right. And are you originally from Colorado?
I am not. I'm originally from California,
Oh, okay.
the
Nice,
Bay Area.
nice.
So
Oh,
I've
the
been
Bay Area.
here.
Now, what's your background in music, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I began studying classical violin when I was about 3 years old. That was in the Bay Area at a place called the Cap
Wow.
Street Music School, which is notable because during that time, which is early 80s, Art Landy was actually brief director at the school, which he'll come
Wow.
back later.
Wow. Cool.
But my dad is a self-taught folk jazz blues musician. So I
Huh?
also grew up playing like Irish tunes and Django jazz and stuff with him.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Yeah.
and after many years of like being fairly heavily involved with classical music, but also
Mm.
doing that stuff on the side, about halfway through conservatory, I went in high school. I was in the San Francisco Conservatory prep program, and then I went
Okay.
to college at Peabody Institute and Johns Hopkins University.
Right.
Halfway through that dual degree program, I dropped the Peabody part because it just wasn't, my heart wasn't in being a professional classical musician.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It really has to be. I mean, it's got to be super competitive, and especially for violin. Yeah.
yeah, and not only that, I mean, just the whole culture around it
Yeah.
was really unappealing.
Yeah.
Um, I had some experiences. I got to play in some, summer festival orchestras and stuff with professional symphony musicians.
Yeah.
That really turned me off.
Right. It wasn't your thing. I know. It's interesting because I grew up in Texas, and I got into jazz as a teenager, trombone, and then I did classical. But I was always kind of turned off by maybe inspired by the competitive part of music in terms of the intensity of it, but then kind of like inspired to get better, but then kind of turned off by it because I like the art of it, right? But it's kind of
Right.
ironic now that I've created this software to run auditions. So you get out of the classical space, and then what did you get
Yeah,
into after
so
that?
so I moved up to New York with the intention of like finding a path in music that felt
Yeah.
good to me, and ended up doing a bunch of interesting things. I played with a new classical music collective called Antisocial Chamber Music, which is
Whoa.
still active and still doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
But I was there at the beginning of that group. I played in a rock band that was fronted by a guy who had been like a kind of a big star in Hungary in the 80s. That was sort of
Wow.
like Hungarian art rock, and went on tour
Okay.
to Hungary with him. And um,
What kind of style? What style was it? Like prog rock, or was it?
it's not prog. I would say more like Iggy Pop and Lou Reed and David Bowie and that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Right.
Um,
That's very specific. I mean, were you the only? Were you playing violin there or viola?
Yeah, yeah.
So
But
were
well,
you
I was playing electric violin.
electric? Okay. And how long did you do this freelance thing? Just being a musician.
So for a really long time, so through those activities, and I eventually I had a day job, which I eventually quit, and I started busking in the subway, and I met this banjo player who said, "Do you play bluegrass?" And I said, "Yes, I do." I
Really?
did. I mean, I grew up listening to it because of my parents, but
Yeah.
So he liked what I did. He hired me for this weekly gig.
It was Bela
And
Fleck, wasn't it? No.
no, very.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a more of a punk old time band than it was bluegrass.
Yeah.
But there were some fairly skilled, very skilled musicians in the group, including the person who had later become my husband.
Oh, that's
We
yeah.
met and started writing music together, and I also was doing gigs with other people in this group. But
So what
I
does he
then
play?
he plays mandolin and guitar, and he's also a great songwriter. So eventually, this was back in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And so then 9/11 happened, and we decided that New York was not a great place to be if we
Yeah.
wanted.
So you were there on September 11th then.
Yes, we were. We had a gig with this band that we met in the night before. Really wild time to be there, but
Then where did you move after that?
so we moved to Portland and started this group with a couple of musicians from ostensibly the broader jam band scene,
Okay.
which on the West Coast was really, yeah, that's where it was really happening. And that was the band called Taarka, and at the time it was different than people in Colorado might know us now.
Okay.
But in various forms, that band toured regularly from 2002 to 2000, really 2015, when
Yeah.
it
13
seemed
years.
like,
Wow.
yeah, it
So
seemed
you've
like.
seen a lot of hotel rooms and but so were you on buses or were you like air
So
what kind?
we had various things. We had
Yeah.
a diesel van, 15 passenger diesel
Oh,
van.
right. That had a
We
million miles
started
on it.
out touring in a Subaru Forester.
Yes. Okay.
Uh,
That's so iconic. Yeah, jam band, folk, Super Forester, like it goes all together. But Super
totally.
Forester does not have a lot of room for all your equipment.
No, but we did
Yeah.
it somehow. But we ended up getting a van, and then we got a school bus.
Oh wow, that's even more iconic. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
on
we were
brand. Yeah.
stereotypes.
Yes. From 3 years old, you were taking classical violin lessons. 3 years,
Yep.
and then all the way through the San Francisco Conservatory grade school, and that so you were in high school. You would go over there, and then did they have an orchestra you're a part of? And
So I
youth,
was part of the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra, which is sort of the premier Bay Area
yeah,
youth orchestra.
yeah,
I was a violist in that group, and I was like assistant principal for
right.
most of my time there.
Wow.
When
Do you
I
have?
toured Europe.
So you're no stranger to doing auditions then, as a young person.
Yeah, as a
And
young person,
yeah,
I did it a couple times as an adult, and
tell me tell me a little bit about your trauma that you can think of, that you can remember related to an audition.
yeah. So, I mean, in high school, I think I don't know, I think I had less attachment to it, but
Yeah.
after I moved to Oregon, I was granted an audition for the Oregon Symphony
Okay.
on viola again, which I hadn't been playing a lot. And
And this was after your time in New York.
yeah, so,
Okay.
I was maybe 25 at this point.
Yeah.
And I had been out of the classical world long enough that, I prepared the excerpts I knew I should prepare, and I had, relevant works, Walton Concerto and Bach and stuff ready, but
Right.
just the environment of it, and it was not a blind audition, so they could see me, I could see them, and I got so nervous that I wore contact lenses, my eyes dried up and my contacts fell out, and I couldn't see them.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
I've worn contacts since I was a kid, and I cannot see anything without my contacts. So at that point, the audition would be over.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so then it was, and I fumbled, and one of the people at the panel said, "Is this a joke?"
Uh huh.
you know,
Wow.
at that, and the other folks were very nice about it, and they said, you should try again. Like they obviously saw something in
So
you.
you come in, it's your time to audition. Is it like the typical theater moment? Like they're like in the audience of a theater, or was it like in a room?
It was in a room.
Okay, so it's in this room. You go in, and then you're so nervous, and then your eyes fall, your contacts fall out, and then
Pretty much my eyes fell out.
right. So was this before you played at anything?
I had started playing
Oh wow! So you're and then okay,
a portion of the Walton Concerto, and then like
yeah. Did you
my
have it
contact-
memorized, or were you reading?
I had it memorized at
Yeah.
one point, but I hadn't been. I think I hadn't prepared adequately because again,
You need, yeah,
it
right.
had been long enough that I was
Right.
out of that.
So your
era.
contacts fall out, and then so did you have to stop mid? You were playing, and you stop, and then some.
playing and I stopped.
And then one of the panelists asks you, "Is this a joke?" Yeah. Why would anybody go through the trouble of going in, scheduling an audition, going in and have this happen that just for a joke, right?
Right. Yeah. So that was pretty awful.
Wow.
I have not taken another classical audition since then.
No. Wow. So what did you do? Did you continue to play after that? After they asked you that question, or did you leave?
Yeah, I did, but I had my bow was shaking and stuff. I was sort of
Right.
wrecked.
Now I'm curious because you said that after you left Baltimore or the John Hopkins Peabody world, or you had discovered that wasn't your vibe. It
Yeah.
was you wanted to be in but then why did you go back into it? Was it you needed a job, or was
Well, it was like Portland was an interesting place to be a musician because there's a lot of very skilled amateurs there, which means the pay for gigs is low.
yeah,
And the pay for, even a specialist teacher, because I have specialties that most violin teachers don't
right,
offer. So it was hard. So yeah, I was like, well, this would be a nice gig to have. And I had
Right.
also, like, one of my students was the principal second violinist of the symphony. So
Okay.
she
Wow.
came to me for improv lessons.
okay. So
So I
you just
felt
thought
like-
I'd give it a try, right?
Yeah.
What do you thinking back to that experience, and what do you think they could have done differently? And I don't want to make it sound like they could have like done something to make you not nervous, but what do you think about that whole setup just made it kind of artificially stressful?
Yeah, I mean, I think the environment in which it took place felt like an interrogation room. My recollection is that it was a plastic table, like the kind
Yeah.
you get at Target or whatever. Yeah, very very
Cold.
bright lighting, cold environment.
Okay.
So I think they could have given me an indication that the culture of the symphony in general was welcoming.
Okay.
Which I did get that afterwards from most of the other people on the panel, but initially there was this very, prove yourself vibe, which on the one hand I understand why that feels necessary for
Right.
an audition, but I don't think, especially for the symphony experience, I don't think it's actually necessary, especially for like a section violinist or a section violist. I don't think it's necessary to put people in that position. People don't necessarily play their best under those circumstances, and that's not the kind of circumstance they're going to be performing in either. They're going to be part of something which is hopefully embracing, and I'm not saying that to indicate that a section musician should hide within the section, but
Right.
in order to be part of a section, you want to feel connected to the people that you're playing with, right? And the rest of the orchestra.
Right. Yes. Well, I think it sounds like you're saying is that they didn't really mimic the job, the job that it was in the audition process at all. It was almost artificial, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, I mean, especially as orchestras are, they're a little bit in trouble, let's face it.
Yeah.
So, and with any organization, whether it's an orchestra or, high school band or external group for high school students, whatever, you want, I think you want a community culture because that helps not only make the quality of music better, it's employee satisfaction, right? Whether or not someone's an employee, whether they're just part of the group. I think that is important to the music making.
What do you mean by community in terms of, okay, say I'm playing, I play trombone, but say I'm auditioning to be part of the Colorado Symphony, and obviously I'm going to play my role. I'm probably never going to play a solo piece for the Colorado Symphony, but I'm going to play my role as the second, in the trombone section there. Only 3 trombones. What does it mean for me to have that community there, right?
Well, it means that you enjoy showing up to work. It means that because you feel responsibility to the other members of your section and the orchestra because you like them as people. I'm probably like also talking about some things I know about orchestras beyond my audition experience, but feel a sense of camaraderie with the people you're working with. You're going to deliver better because let's start with the assumption that you love music and you love playing music. So
right.
It's just more incentive to give everything you've got to each performance because you feel responsible to the other members of your community.
Right.
As opposed to feeling like, okay, this is a job. I'm on the union clock. I'm showing up. I am leaving. I'm out of here the second the clock, and I'm not talking to anybody. And I've done stuff, worked with the Colorado Symphony as an arranger with Elephant Revival and stuff.
Yeah.
And whenever those rehearsals and performances happen, the symphony members are gone.
It's really interesting you bring that up because it's not something I've thought about. I think because coming from the jazz space where it's more like pop, rock, folk music where you have people who are friends.
Right.
Or even if they're not friends, they're associates and they respect each other. And that's part of the making of the music is, and then how many rock bands breaking up is part of the history is they broke up, they can't get along with one another, and there's an assumption if we're going to make great music we have to get along somewhat, and because that's part of it. But to hear you say okay, that's not an assumption in the traditional orchestra. Yeah, I could see that being a real problem. It's almost like an NBA team where you just we're gonna bring in this person or draft this person without any time practicing with them. The chemistry of the team makes a big difference. So when they do the auditions, you're saying you're completely isolated from the other musicians. You're just auditioning for people who are auditioning you.
Yeah, and I don't even you wouldn't even necessarily meet the other people that are auditioning for your role or for other roles.
Right.
It was an extremely isolated process.
Do you think the orchestra assumes that you just really, really want this job?
I think they assume you need the job and you want the job because that's what classical musicians do. They audition for orchestras.
Right, okay.
They hope to get an orchestra gig even though ever smaller percentages of conservatory graduates are getting jobs because the number of positions is, it's finite.
So do you have a teaching studio now? Do you have students?
So actually what I'm doing now is I decided to go back to school and get a master's degree in jazz performance and pedagogy. For me, I grew up listening to a lot of jazz violinists and I spent, when I was Yeah, definitely Stefan Grappelli. Steph Smith is a favorite of mine. Yeah, like pretty much every jazz violinist that has lived, I've learned
Yeah.
something that they did. I've transcribed some solo, but I transcribed Wes Montgomery solos and you know,
Yeah.
all kinds of little tidbits just because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
What's been interesting about doing this degree, the first semester I was working with Brad Good, and
Yeah. Right.
like my sense of groove, since I spent so many years playing bluegrass,
Yeah.
tended to cleave a little bit more to that like front side of the beat.
Right.
Know?
Right.
And also I hadn't played with drums a lot.
That's true. In bluegrass, you don't play.
My pulse is where I want to be. And often
Yeah.
I'm in a trio or something, I'm often the drummer for a portion of the
Right.
tune. So just, the first couple months was like reminding myself, oh yeah, I gotta go with their groove.
Right. Yeah.
It's, I have a lot of stylistic understanding, I guess. And I'm one of those musicians who enjoys being, while retaining my own individual qualities. I like being chameleonic. I like sounding right for the style. So
You've been on the side of the judge, adjudicator, whatever you want to call him. And I'm thinking back to your personal experience with auditions and your feelings. How do you handle? Have you done a college audition? Or have you been involved in that, or somebody coming in?
I have, and I've done juries.
So how do you, since you have this love of the community part of music, how have you shifted your judging over the years in terms of both, with blind judging and where you have people coming in?
I mean, most of my experience has been with face-to-face situations.
Right.
I always want to put someone at their ease before they start to play.
Yeah.
So, asking them how they're doing, maybe if I'm able to pull something funny out of my hat,
Yeah.
which usually works.
Yeah. You're right.
Making them so that laughter is a great way for someone to physically relax.
Right.
And,
Yeah. So it's very we would call it motherly.
well, I'm one of those.
Yeah. So you're not in there with a stopwatch. You have 2 seconds to adjust, to put rosin on your bow, and you already have to have that ready to go. And
For goodness sakes, we're all human.
right.
And
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been on that side of things.
Right.
And it doesn't feel. I think thinking about juries in college,
Yeah. Juries. Yeah.
I did pretty well, but there was always one guy that just he just didn't think much of me. He didn't think I made the cut, and so my juries would be like A,
Yeah. Because it's and it wasn't the Olympics where they're dropping out the top and bottom, right? And
Right.
yes, so it was that person that they felt they had to play that role somehow to balance things out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think he didn't in his being. I don't think he felt good or felt joyful or any of that stuff. He was like this crotchety old man with
Yeah.
a very, very famous name in the classical.
Oh, this is an actual person. Okay, now you could. So you're not.
Also taught it.
You're not talking about just a hypothetical
yeah.
person. This is yeah. So if given these feelings you have, what do you think then is the best way? I go back to a goal. What's the goal of the audition? Is it, if it's to place or accept somebody into a college or give them a scholarship or something? How do you approach? Say you were the only person judging. How would you evaluate them? The whole thing. How would you evaluate whether they get into your school?
So the goal, first off, the goal is to see what they're capable of. as a player, especially when we're speaking about a college audition. So there are certain things that we don't need to be there. Like if their technique isn't perfect but has good foundations, that's fine. So we're looking for a strong I'm looking for a strong technical foundation. I'm looking for some sense of musicality, some sense of phrase.
Okay.
That thing is maybe more important because that's not something that someone can necessarily be trained to do, right? To have that musical sense, the sense of
Right.
line and lyric and singing and
So you would,
communicating.
right, the technical part and then the artistic part, right? So
Yeah,
how,
so technically, I want somebody who isn't a total mess. Who we're not going to have to spend all our time cleaning up technique.
okay,
But I can't really teach someone artistry if they don't already have an evident sense of what it is, even if it's rough.
right.
But I can't see what they can do with that if they're so nervous that their contact lenses are falling out.
No.
So that's the purpose
Yeah.
in my mind of putting someone at their ease, because I want to see what they're potentially capable of, not
Right.
how they perform under pressure.
So one more question I have is, you have all this experience teaching lessons and helping students, anybody really, prepare for auditions. What are some tips you have for students?
Eat lots of bananas.
Okay, that's very specific. Yeah.
They have natural beta blockers. I think things that have helped my students are just making sure they can play the material in their sleep. So
Okay.
preparing it more than they think they need to, because even if I'm on the audition panel and I'm so nice and friendly, they're going to get nervous.
Let me ask you this then. How do you, because I was competitive, I felt like there wasn't room for any mistakes in a sense of, or there's also maybe a style of playing a piece, an etude or something that is, you're going to sound different than the next person, no matter what, right?
Sure.
And so you're not a machine. But anyway, but I would almost get I don't know. I don't want to say that I was too obsessed with getting it perfectly, but it was that competitive part of me got in there, and it just became the only thing I was doing musically, instead of just enjoying being a musician. Have you ever dealt with that? I don't know if this is, my personality of just being driven or.
Well, I think that's not an uncommon thing, and I know that research has shown that interleaved practicing works better than hitting the same thing over and over again. So if you work on specific things in one piece, you can approach that by then going to do something else, either
Right.
musically or working on some other aspect of musicianship, and then coming back to it, so that you're getting away from the purely technical aspects of it, so that you're not trying to do everything at once. Great talking to you, Eric. Hopefully that's some helpful stuff. My opinions about the classical music establishment.
Yeah, I'll send it off to them. I'll send your opinions off to the establishment at classicalmusic.com.
Take care.